Right now, more than 100 wildfires are listed as active across the western United States, and the federal government has every firefighting aircraft, crew, and bulldozer it owns already committed to the line. That last part is the detail people keep missing. It is also the reason a bad August can turn catastrophic in a matter of days. Before this video ends, I want to resolve one specific number: how the country ended up at the top of its own fire alert scale for almost 4 straight weeks. In 2026 so far, over 46,000 wildfires have burned more than 6.4 million acres. That is roughly the size of New Hampshire, and the phrase "so far" is doing heavy lifting. Fire season usually runs through October, sometimes into November. The halfway point has not even arrived. Now add the other number. The National Interagency Fire Center has kept the national preparedness level at 5, the maximum possible since July 18th. There is no level 6, so when a new fire starts tonight, it does not pull a fresh crew out of reserve. It pulls someone off whatever fire they are already on. That gap between what people expect and what is actually available is exactly what this story is about. If you live in Nevada, Utah, or Wyoming, this is not a story about somewhere else. It is the sky outside your window, the smell in your car, the alert on your phone. If you live somewhere else, it is still worth understanding, because the fire season in the American West has a way of becoming everyone's problem. Smoke travels, resources travel, so does the cost of rebuilding. Let me set the scene for the 3 states at the center of this. Near Reno, Nevada, 3 fires have burned within about 30 miles of a city of more than 250,000 people. Around 13,000 residents have been forced out of their homes. In Utah, a fire near a popular reservoir went from a few hundred acres to over 13,000 acres in less than 2 days. In Wyoming, a fire that did not exist on a Sunday morning was the state's biggest wildfire of the year by Monday afternoon. Oregon and Washington have their own emergencies, some of them worse on a structural damage level. But Nevada, Utah, and Wyoming are where the pattern is sharpest right now. Here is what you need to know about how this system works. Fire response in the United States is not one giant fire department. It is a chain. Local crews try first. If they cannot hold a fire, they ask their region for help. If the region runs dry, the request goes national. The agency that coordinates all of that is the National Interagency Fire Center, and it rates the strain on a scale of 1 to 5. 1 is calm, 5 is everything committed. Right now, the country is at 5 and has been for nearly a month. That matters more than any single acre count because it changes the math for every new spark. A fire that would normally get helicopters within the hour might wait longer. An air tanker that would be on standby near your town could be on the other side of the state. The system is not broken. It is just fully occupied. So when you hear about the fire near Reno, or the fire near Hennifer, or the fire south of Lander, you are not hearing about isolated bad luck. You are hearing about the same nationwide bottleneck, repeating itself over and over, and that bottleneck is the subject of the next section. The central fact of this entire fire season is simple. The United States has run out of spare firefighting capacity, not because of poor planning, not because the people in charge are incompetent, because there are too many fires in too many places at the same time, and every single resource has been spoken for. The national preparedness level has been at 5 since July 18. For context, many fire seasons never reach level 5 at all. When it does happen, it usually lasts a few days, maybe a week. Almost a full month at the top of the scale means the reserve bench is gone. There is no secret cache of helicopters waiting in a hangar. There is no hidden team of firefighters resting at headquarters. Everyone is already on the line. Close to 30,000 firefighters are currently assigned to incidents across the country. That number includes federal crews, state crews, local volunteers, and support personnel. And even that has not been enough. The United States has asked for help from other countries. More than 100 firefighters from Australia and New Zealand have flown across the Pacific to work on fires in the American Northwest. That is not a small symbolic gesture. That is a country that usually helps other countries, reaching out for help itself. The military has been pulled in too. About 240 active duty soldiers from Joint Base Lewis McChord in Washington State have been taken off their normal duties and sent into fire zones. Their mission is not training. It is digging fire lines and cutting brush. 4 C-130 cargo planes, the kind built to move troops and tanks, are being loaded with fire retardant instead. 2 are launching from Klamath Falls, Oregon, and 2 from Redding, California. When you see military transport planes dropping retardant on forests, you are seeing a country that has already emptied its civilian toolbox. What does that mean for you? If you live in a fire-prone area, it means response times could be slower than you expect. Not because anyone is slacking, because the fire engine that would normally race to your neighborhood might already be 200 miles away on another fire. The helicopter you see on the news might be the only one available for a whole region. In a level 5 situation, the backup plan is already in motion somewhere else. That is not speculation. It is the literal definition of the alert level. And it brings up a question that is harder to answer than it sounds. What does 6.4 million acres actually feel like on the ground? That is where the numbers stop being abstract. Let me try to make this physical. 6 million acres is not a number you can hold in your head. It is more than the state of New Hampshire. It is a landscape roughly the size of a small country charred in a matter of months. The National Interagency Fire Center says this year's burned acreage is about 156% of the 10-year average. That means the West has already burned 1.5 times more land than a typical full season, and the season is only in the middle of August. Now look at the air. In many parts of Nevada, Utah, and Wyoming, relative humidity drops to 10 or 15% by mid-afternoon. To make that meaningful, the Sahara Desert averages around 25% humidity. So there are places in the American West right now that are literally drier than the Sahara. Read that again because it sounds like a typo. It is not. The brush outside Reno is, at certain hours, thirstier than the desert in North Africa. Then add speed. Fires burning through sagebrush and dry grass do not creep. They run. Reports from firefighting agencies have described flames moving at 10 to 15 miles per hour in the kind of fuel that covers northern Nevada and Wyoming. That may not sound fast for a car, but it is faster than most people can move through smoke over uneven ground with a car key in one hand and a child in the other. A fire that is a mile away can reach your road in 4 or 5 minutes. Here is an even stranger way to feel the scale. The Stallion Fire near Pyramid Lake in Nevada went from about 1,000 acres to more than 20,000 acres in a single night. The Rocky Canyon Fire in Utah grew from roughly 600 acres to over 13,000 acres in about 2 days. The Weiser Knoll Fire in Wyoming went from 0 to 13,350 acres in under 24 hours. These are not slow-building fires. They are fires that triple in size between dinner and breakfast, but knowing how big the fires are does not explain why they move that way. To understand that, you have to look at the machinery underneath, and the strangest piece of that machinery is a cloud that throws lightning but cannot save anything. Start with fuel. The terrain around Reno, Hennifer, and Lander is not a deep, moist forest. It is a carpet of sagebrush, dry grass, and pinyon juniper woodland. That kind of fuel is designed, in a sense, to burn fast. It is dense, low, and cured by weeks of heat. A fire moving through it behaves more like a wave rolling across the ocean than a flame climbing up a tall tree. There's nothing big to slow it down. Then there is the high-pressure dome sitting over the west. Think of it as a lid on a pot. It parks over the region, traps heat, and bakes everything underneath. Temperatures have been above normal for weeks. In some places, they have been record-breaking. By mid-afternoon, the ground is radiating heat, and the plants have been preheated until they are basically ready to ignite. Now add the thunderstorms. Not the kind that dumps rain and moves on. Firefighters call them dry thunderstorms. They produce lightning, but the rain evaporates before it reaches the ground. The air is so dry that water falling through it vanishes. So the lightning strikes, hits a dead tree or a patch of grass, and starts a fire. The storm that brought the lightning does not even get credit for a damp surface. It is like a cloud that carries a box of matches, but refuses to carry water. Then there is the terrain. Fire moves faster uphill because heat rises and preheats the fuel in front of it. That means canyons and ridges do not just channel smoke, they channel flames. In the hills around Reno, wind can be funneled through valleys in unpredictable directions. Firefighters can build what looks like a perfect containment line on one side of a canyon, only to have the wind shift and push the fire around the other side. Stopping a fire in that terrain is like trying to stop water from running downhill. You can slow it, redirect it, sometimes turn it, but you cannot always control it. And the biggest fires create their own weather. The heat from a large blaze can punch a column of smoke so high that it condenses into clouds. Those clouds can generate lightning, which starts more fires. Fire, in other words, can reproduce. It can throw embers hundreds of yards ahead of the main front, start spot fires behind the firefighters, and then those spot fires can merge into a single larger front. That is how a fire like the Bug Fire and the Fred Mountain Fire became one 44,000-acre problem near Reno. Two fires got close enough, their heat and wind pulled them together, and the merge turned two manageable emergencies into one overwhelming one. The mechanism is brutal but predictable. It explains why these fires grow so fast. What it does not explain is why so many of them started in the first place. That is the uncomfortable thread running through this season. Here is the part of the story that does not sit comfortably. Some of the most explosive fires in the West this week were not started by lightning. They were started by people. Take Nevada. The Fred Mountain Fire, which later merged with the Bug Fire near Reno, did not begin with a storm. Authorities have arrested and charged a 47-year-old woman named Christine Mitchell with arson after she allegedly walked up to firefighters and said she started it. That is not a rumor. It is in the arrest record. While two major fires were burning near a city of hundreds of thousands of people, and while crews were stretched to the limit, someone allegedly chose to light another one. Wyoming tells a different but equally human story. The Weiser Knoll Fire, the one that became the state's biggest wildfire of the year in less than a day, started when the wheel bearing on a trailer overheated and threw sparks into dry sagebrush, according to Fremont County officials. A broken piece of metal on a highway near South Pass, a few sparks in the wrong place, and suddenly 62,000 acres were burning near the Wind River Range. Utah's Rocky Canyon fire is also being investigated as human-caused. The exact source is still unconfirmed, but investigators have ruled out natural causes as the leading explanation. In Washington state, the destructive fire that tore through Spokane and destroyed more than 900 buildings also led to an arson arrest. A 37-year-old man was booked into jail in connection with that fire, according to authorities. Now, this is not a lecture about evil people. Most human-caused fires are accidents: a hot exhaust pipe parked on dry grass, a dragged trailer chain, a cigarette tossed out a window, a campfire left smoldering. The point is that the West is already at level 5. There is no spare capacity, so when a new fire is caused by a preventable mistake, it does not just add one more flame to the map. It pulls resources away from every other fire and every other community at the worst possible moment. Here is why that matters so much. The weather has made this landscape explosive, but the weather did not choose to strike that trailer wheel. The weather did not choose to start a fire near Pyramid Lake. The people who made those choices or those mistakes are part of the story too. And some of them are facing criminal charges. The uncomfortable truth is that the same system that is straining to fight these fires is also being asked to deal with fires that should never have happened at all. Before you accept that as the whole story, though, there are reasons to pump the brakes, because the data is messier than it looks. Every dramatic fire season produces a clean narrative. This year is a disaster. The system is overwhelmed. Human carelessness is making it worse, and all of that is partly true. But the details are more complicated than the headline. First, look at the false evacuation alert in Utah. When the Rocky Canyon fire exploded near Hennifer, an emergency message was sent out that was supposed to cover a small area. Instead, it reached people across most of Summit County and even into neighboring counties. Thousands of people who were nowhere near the fire suddenly thought they were being ordered to leave. Phones lit up, families grabbed their keys, some people actually started driving. Then came the correction: ignore that alert unless you are in the actual zone. That kind of mistake does not just cause panic, it can make people skeptical of the next alert, the one that might be real. It is a reminder that the information system, as vital as it is, can fail at the worst possible moment. Second, fire numbers are less precise than they look on a news graphic. Acreage estimates change dramatically when better mapping becomes available. A fire that initially appears to be 13,000 acres might be remapped larger or smaller the next day. Containment percentages can jump from 0 to 30% in a single shift, not because firefighters suddenly got lucky, but because they finally got accurate GPS data. That does not make the fires less dangerous. It just means the moment-by-moment numbers should be read with humility. Third, the human cause story is more complicated than it sounds. Yes, several major fires this week are linked to people, but wildfires have always been started by people, both intentionally and accidentally. Lightning has always been a major trigger too. The broader question of whether this season is driven by climate change, past forest management, a wet spring that grew extra grass, or simple drought cycles is not something any single fire can answer. Scientists are careful about that, and so should we be. A fire can be made worse by a warming climate and still be lit by a person, and both statements can be true at the same time. Fourth, the system is strained but not defeated. Wyoming's Cold Springs fire ignited near Douglas, raced through rural land, and threatened homes. Yet, within about 24 hours of being reported, crews had it knocked down. That did not happen because the fire was small. It happened because local and state responders dropped everything and got there fast. At the same time, the country is at level 5. Some fires still get stopped before they become monsters. So what is the honest takeaway? The situation is genuinely dangerous. The resources are genuinely stretched. But the story is not a single straight line from spark to apocalypse. It is a messy, overlapping set of fires, decisions, errors, and successes. The useful part is figuring out which pieces are actually solid enough to act on. That brings us to what we can trust. Strip away the projections, the false alerts, and the unresolved investigations, and there is still a solid core of verified facts. These are the things we know for certain. We know that more than 46,000 wildfires have been reported in the United States in 2026 so far. We know they have burned more than 6.4 million acres. We know that is about 156% of the 10-year average for this point in the year. Those numbers come from the National Interagency Fire Center, the same agency that set the preparedness level to 5 and kept it there since July 18th. That is not a guess. That is tracking data. We also know what those numbers look like on the ground. Around Reno, the bug fire grew to more than 70,000 acres by Wednesday. The stallion fire pushed past 33,000 acres. Both were reported at 0% containment at that point. That does not mean nothing was being done. It means firefighters had not yet drawn a single line around those fires that they believed would hold. About 13,000 people near Reno were under evacuation orders. The Reno Sparks Livestock Event Center took in more than 150 large animals from people fleeing with horses, cows, and goats. Hotels in nearby Sparks began offering rooms to evacuees at $49 a night and waived extra fees. Those are not rumors. Those are concrete reports from the evacuation effort. There is also solid good news buried in the chaos. The Rocky Canyon fire in Utah, after racing from a few hundred acres to over 13,000, eventually was mapped at around 15,600 acres, with containment climbing to nearly 30%, and remarkably, no structures were lost. That is rare for a fire that moved that fast, and it is a direct result of people evacuating quickly and firefighters making the right calls. The Widemouth to Fire and Fish Lake National Forest has consumed over 122,000 acres. It is only about 30% contained, but 877 firefighters are still assigned to it. The fact that so many people are still on that line, despite the national shortage, is a measurable achievement. The same goes for the helicopter crews who have risked their lives all summer. 2 pilots died fighting that fire. A heavy equipment operator died on a fire in Oregon. Every one of those deaths is a concrete human cost. And then there is the Cold Springs fire in Wyoming. It started near Douglas, threatened ranches and rural homes and forced evacuations. Multiple structures were reported on fire, but crews got it under control within about a day. That is the system working, even at level 5. It is not perfect. It is not fast enough everywhere, but it is real. The solid facts point in 2 directions at once. This is one of the most intense fire seasons in years, and many of the people fighting it are doing extraordinary work with the tools they have left. The harder question is what happens between now and November. And the forecast for the rest of the season is not a single prediction, it is a range, but the range is not comforting. Forecasters at AccuWeather have projected that as many as 8 million acres could burn across the country by the end of 2026. If that happens, this would rank among the most destructive fire years in modern American history. That is a projection, not a certainty. But it is based on the same conditions that are already visible in the landscape. The National Fire Outlook issued on August 1st expects above normal fire potential to continue through September in Wyoming, northern Utah, northern Nevada, northeast California, Oregon, and Washington. That is a wide swath of the West. It means the risk is not going down. It is staying elevated through the season's traditional peak. In the near term, the weather pattern is not offering much relief. Dry thunderstorms remain possible from the eastern Sierra through Idaho and into Wyoming. Every one of those storms is a potential ignition source. The one piece of good news is that Arizona is expected to see wet thunderstorms, where actual rain falls with the lightning. That could help parts of the southwest, but it does little for the northern half of the fire zone. The aftermath of the big fires is still unfolding too. The massive 550,000 acre fire on the Oregon-Idaho border continues to smolder. Washington is still dealing with the aftermath of the Spokane fire, which destroyed or damaged more than 900 buildings and forced 65,000 people to evacuate. In Wyoming, the Weiser Knoll fire had grown to around 62,500 acres with 30% containment, and rain was forecast later in the week. That rain could help, or it could bring lightning. Firefighters in the West know not to celebrate a storm until it actually delivers water. There are also new things to watch for. In Nevada, the bug fire and stallion fire are still not fully contained. The evacuation zones around Reno are shifting. In Utah, statewide fire restrictions remain at the highest level. No open fires, no fireworks, no campfires anywhere. That is a blunt measure of how much concern officials have. In Wyoming, the same dry pattern that turned a trailer wheel bearing into a 62,000-acre fire is expected to continue through September. If you live in a fire-affected county, the next few weeks are not the time to relax. County alert systems, evacuation maps, and go-bags are not overreactions. They are the minimum level of preparation. The people who evacuated in the middle of the night this week did not have time to pack carefully. The people who stayed until the last minute had to drive through smoke and hope. So where does that leave us? It brings us back to the number I promised to explain at the beginning, and it is not the number you might expect. The number that matters most in this story is not 6.4 million acres. It is not 156%. It is 28 days, or nearly 4 weeks. That is how long the United States has been sitting at maximum fire preparedness level 5. That number is so easy to overlook because it does not sound dramatic, but it changes everything. It means there is no reserve crew waiting for the next big fire. It means every new fire is being handled by people who are already exhausted, already assigned, already miles away. It means a small mistake on a highway can become a statewide emergency. It means the difference between a manageable fire year and a historic one is not just the weather, it is the margin. And this year, that margin is gone. We cannot control the lightning. We cannot turn off the wind. We cannot make the humidity jump back to normal. But some of the fires this season were started by people, and that part we can control. A checked trailer wheel, a cold campfire, a cigarette put out properly, a decision to wait one day before doing something risky. Those choices are small, but they are also the only immediate leverage any of us has. The West will keep burning for weeks because the season says it will. There will be more evacuations, more smoke, more stories of people loading animals into trailers at midnight. The only open question is whether we add more fires to that list by accident or by carelessness, or whether we let the exhausted firefighters who are already out there catch a single break. Every one of those 6.4 million acres was once someone's plan, someone's favorite place, someone's home. The next acre has not been chosen yet. It is the one we still get to decide.